Hey guys, it's John from Digital Foundry, and today I have a copy of Rise of the Tomb Raider for Xbox 360 ready to go. You know what that means, it's time for a face-off against its bigger sister on Xbox One. The fact that Rise of the Tomb Raider is appearing on Xbox 360 at all is interesting, but really ports to last generation platforms are nothing new. Even once a new generation is well underway, there can still be money to be made on older consoles, and with Microsoft securing temporary exclusivity rights to the game, it's probably a smart move. Of course, after a certain point, the quality of these ports tend to take a dive. We saw this very same thing last year with ports of games such as Shadow of Mordor, Far Cry 4, Dragon Age Inquisition, all of which were significantly pared back next to their next-gen siblings. One generation prior, we even had a port of Tomb Raider Underworld make an appearance on PlayStation 2. Yet with Rise of the Tomb Raider, the situation is different. This time we have the talented bunch of folks at Nixxes taking point on this Xbox 360 port of the game, and the results are, well, remarkable. This is the same game that we enjoyed on Xbox One, with nips and tucks made in all of the expected places. It lacks much of the visual panache of the next-gen version, yes, but it's still an attractive game and a worthy sequel to the 2013 installment. It doesn't feel like an afterthought, rather a project which has received a lot of care and attention. So without further ado, let's take a side-by-side look. Let's start here in Syria, one of the first areas players will visit in the game. Under a low-hanging sun, we can see right away that Xbox 360 is lacking many of the finer details we see on Xbox One. First off, Xbox 360 renders the game at 1280 by 720 with a pass of FXAA. The color depth has also been reduced with more obvious banding present throughout many scenes. Of course, it's naturally blurrier and more pixelated as you would expect, but there are actually some instances where image quality almost surpasses Xbox One. Look at the pillars here, for instance. The Xbox One version exhibits aliasing artifacts that give the impression of a lower resolution in comparison. Or how about the shimmering trees in this scene? Without the associated specular effect, the scenery remains clearer throughout. Also, check out the carpet on the title screen here. The amount of anisotropic filtering used on Xbox 360 actually exceeds Xbox One. Sure, the rest of the scene is more complex on Xbox One, but it's those small changes that we were surprised to uncover. Now as for the rest, well, textures are pared back and geometry has been reduced, the kind of stuff you'd expect really, but it still manages to look pretty nice. You can see around the edges of the scenery here just what I'm talking about. Character rendering has also been cut down, with subsurface scattering replaced with faked lighting designed to recreate a similar appearance, though in some situations it can look rather strange. You can see here how Lara almost appears to be radioactive looking in this section. Volumetric lighting is also gone, as one would expect, with texture effects sometimes being deployed instead. The typical sun glare effect is still there, of course, and HDR lighting remains intact, complete with tone mapping. Then we have the snow rendering. Not unsurprisingly, the deformable snow has been eliminated. The tessellated effect on Xbox One is instead replaced with a much simpler technique that still manages to look pretty decent given the platform. Video overlays used in certain sequences, such as this avalanche here, are still present on 360, though the number of passes for effects and lighting have been cut down. Of course, Tress effects has been removed as well, with results more in line with the original version of Tomb Raider 2013 on consoles. We certainly prefer Tress effects, but the simplified hair doesn't look half bad here either. We almost wonder if it would have been worth eliminating the feature on Xbox One in order to help avoid frame rate drops. Next on the list, motion blur, which, as you may have guessed, has also been snipped from the game. Shadows too have been pared back with a lower overall resolution. The sample distribution method used on Xbox One? Yeah, that's gone too. Ambient Occlusion is now replaced with a more basic screen space ambient occlusion effect instead of the broad temporal in-house solution used on Xbox One. We also see some areas of the environment removed altogether. Notice the lack of water in this section. Even reflections have been pared back, with the screen space scene reflections removed and replaced. Lara's material effects are still in place, however, with her clothes showing properties of wetness, dirt, and such, just like on Xbox One. The physically based material system and image-based lighting also appear to have been given the boot. Lighting is more flat in appearance, and surfaces appear even less realistic this time. Specular highlights have also been toned down and display in a very different fashion, though in some cases that's actually beneficial, as you can see here. Wandering through this village really gives a general feeling of the changes as a whole. A lot of details are missing now. The grass is pared back significantly, scene geometry is reduced, lighting is simplified, texture filtering is worse here, foliage is less complex, as are the shadows, but it doesn't really look incomplete or ugly for the platform. In fact, the general feeling of the area is very well maintained. One other detail, most of the game's important cutscenes have been pre-recorded using Xbox One footage and inserted into the game. Even on YouTube, you can clearly see compression artifacts here. It should come as no surprise considering that the Xbox 360 version of the game weighs in at 6.23 gigabytes, while the Xbox One version with mostly real-time cutscenes comes in at 20. Okay, so when you list everything out like that, it doesn't sound all that positive, does it? Well, let's keep in mind that we're talking about 10-year-old hardware here running a game designed for a newer machine in full. This is truly the entire game here. The map layouts, animations, and general gameplay are all completely intact. The more advanced rendering features are all missing, of course, but Nixxes still has managed to approximate the look of the game in a reasonable fashion. It doesn't feel like it was pared back in order to run. Real effort has been put into properly converting the game to feel at home on this platform. But there's one thing we really need to address here, and it's something that makes a big difference. On Xbox One, we complained about input latency and its impact on the game experience. In moving to Xbox 360, we were stunned to discover that this same issue does not exist on Microsoft's older console. In fact, Rise of the Tomb Raider feels significantly more responsive here on Xbox 360. Pulling off headshots and manipulating the camera is a joy, and the entire game just feels more satisfying to play. Moving back and forth between the two versions can prove rather jarring as a result. Why this is the case, we cannot say, but it's something to consider when looking at both versions of the game. Okay, so hopefully this gives you a better idea of what to expect from the game. As you can see, a lot of features have gone missing, and when viewed side by side, those differences become obvious. Yet Xbox 360 is a very old piece of hardware at this point, and it's really amazing that the game looks and plays as well as it does. In some cases, ports to older platforms can result in a game that manages to look worse than previous installments on that same platform. Yet here, the game matches the last game handily and doesn't feel like a cheap cash-in. This is a proper version of Rise of the Tomb Raider, and one that actually controls better to boot. Anyways, that wraps this up for the moment. Be sure to check out the rest of the article and the associated frame rate analysis to get a better idea of how the performance stacks up against Xbox One. Also, be sure to check out the rest of our YouTube channel if you enjoyed this video, as we are always producing new content. Anyways, that's all for now. This is John, signing off.